Okay, so good evening and welcome you all to today's TIFR's joint ASSET NSF colloquium by Professor Pankaj Joshi. We are, of course, today celebrating the lives of two of the proudest sons of our country, Mahatma Gandhi and Lal Bahadur Shastri ji. Uh, so today's colloquium is going to be on and about Gandhiji, and to be specific on Gandhi and science. And as you could realize that this is an important topic, just because I think on and off people have been talking about the fact that somehow, saying to say Gandhi is anti-science and so on, several such things. But today we have Professor Pankaj Joshi, who has worked on this particular area for pretty long time, and he's going to kind of give an authentic view of this particular topic of Gandhi and science. And of course, to say it, so I've been talking to him for a while to give this talk, but I'm happy today on Friday, and that is an ASSET colloquium day, and of course, Gandhi Jayanti. And I tried once again and requested him, and he has immediately agreed to give this talk. And as I also mentioned, this is going to be a joint colloquium between NSF and ASSET. So I would now request my co-host, Dr. Jyotishman Dasgupta, to also say a few words about the NSF colloquium at TIFR.
Okay, it's thank you, Satya. It's actually a pleasure to host Professor Pankaj Joshi for this very special colloquium on a very special day. As a part of the ASSET colloquium, of course, we are hosting this particular session, but I, being a part of the NSF Wednesday colloquium coordinator, I'm proud to be associated with this talk, Pankaj. Simply because it talks about a human story and associated with science. And it does not need any more justification why a Wednesday colloquium should be associated with such an event. I just wanted to tell everyone that we are also dealing with current situations in the country when we talk about science through the Wednesday Colloquium Forum. In fact, very next week, we are going to have a discussion room on COVID pandemic, which all of you who are listening to us are welcome to join. I would like to also state that in TIFR, we sort of would love to have all of you participate more and more in these kinds of topics which connect to social awareness of our own personalities in history. So, and happy Gandhi Jayanti and to all of you, and also happy birthday to Lal Bahadur Shastri. Thank you, Satya.
Thank you so much, JD, for very nice remarks about today's colloquium, and also saying a bit about what we are planning to do during this special sort of unprecedented situation. But as you rightly said, I think any stories connected with the people, the society, and especially people whom we are going to listen to today are something which, irrespective of what the domain is, I mean, it should be all welcome, and everybody should be aware of. Especially hearing from the most authentic source. So without taking more of your time now, let me say a couple of words about today's speaker. Yes, I'm sure none of us require any introduction about Professor Joshi, but this is, of course, for many of the participants who are outside TIFR and joining on Zoom and YouTube. Professor Pankaj Joshi is currently the Vice-Chancellor and also the founding director of International Center for Cosmology, that is ICC, as part of CHARUSAT University in Anand in Gujarat. And as many of you know, he was, of course, a senior professor at the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Mumbai, just until the other day before joining CHARUSAT University to establish a cosmology center there. That is what I talked about, ICC. His research in the fields of gravitation and cosmology is reported in a few 200 research papers in journals of very, very high repute, and also very, very well received monographs, both from Oxford and Cambridge. Plus, Joshi has made fundamental contributions, particularly in black hole physics. His extensive analysis of general relativistic gravitational collapse, providing significant insights into final fate of massive collapsing stars in the universe and formation of space-time singularities, cosmic censorship. He held visiting professors positions in many, many countries that too far to even name them here. And he is elected to fellowships of all the scientific academies and won several awards. A few of them, most recent, in fact, is the INSA Vainbapu Memorial Award, Gravity Research Foundation Award, Professor A.C. Banerjee Gold Medal, Memorial Lecture Award, and C.V. Raman Lecture Award by DAE, and so on. And another significant facet of him, I hope many of you know, is his extensive contributions to the outreach and science popularization. He has written large number of books, including in Gujarati and other languages, and books, articles towards science outreach programs, and given, of course, numerous public lectures. So with these few words, now it is time to welcome and invite our own Professor Pankaj Joshi, and we request him to talk on Gandhi and science. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be meeting the TIFR friends and colleagues, and I especially thank the ASSET Colloquium as well as the NSF Colloquium organizers for their very kind initiative and this initiative. Thank you, Satya and Jyotishman. I would, apologize right in the beginning. As far as the subject is concerned, it is a vast subject. Gandhi himself was a man of many, many colors. My own, knowledge on, the Gandhian life and philosophy, by no means I will say it is complete. So then, you might like to ask, how come I am here talking on this particular topic? So the origin was one conversation I have had with Sri Narayan Desai. Narayan Desai is the son of Mahadev Desai. Mahadev Desai was a very close colleague and secretary of Gandhiji. You see, for many, many years, and he contributed in a very big manner. Now, while talking to Narayan Desai ji, I just asked him one day that, what is happening, in our country. I mean, on 2nd October, we talk of Gandhiji, songs are played, and, later we do not see much of the effect of Gandhi either in, in any social, academic, intellectual, scientific, conversations, deliberations, documents. So I asked him that how come? So then he told me, he shot back to me saying that, well, it is for you to do some research into, the point you are making. And he gave me a couple of references to begin, and that was this homework. What I am really going to do today is to, just place a few facts before you, which are all, authenticated, and I will give, various quotations and some historical incidences, which I see greatly relevant to do, because in my experience, I felt that in my experience, I felt that I found that you see, many people do not quite know, you see, the connection that Gandhi have had during his lifetime with science. So let us go back. You see, Aldous Huxley was among the first to brand Gandhi and his movements anti-science. Huxley was quite strong, actually. When you actually read this statement, it's very interesting. He wrote, Tolstoyans and Gandhiites tell us to return to nature. In other words, abandon science altogether and live like primates. The trouble with this advice is it cannot be followed. Science and technology allowed human population to double, but they advocate slaughter, compared to which Timur and Genghis Khan would look trivial. This is what Huxley, wrote. Nehru wrote back to Huxley saying that this may not be a correct attitude. Its logic may be faulty. Now, very interestingly, it was a very turbulent time. Gandhi passed away, the freedom came in. We were very busy with solving the social, economic problems and so on. But then started, the Indian science policy making. And the Indian science policy makers and scientists such as Meghnad Saha, Saha wrote to Russians that he and his brother scientists had as little regard for Gandhi's economic and social theories as you, the Russians, have for Tolstoy. Well, I'm not, giving all the references here, but they can be given. This is just to simplify, and I don't want to make it, as some kind of a, but if anyone is interested in references, I can give. So clear divisions were made, so to say. So Gandhi was someone who could mobilize the masses and therefore useful in that way. But the general impression that developed slowly as I got, as I got to understand, reading all this stuff, it was, sort of very interesting as well as educating, as well as entertaining to me as to, how the history or the events take their shape. Sometimes not most logical path is followed, when the impressions spread. So he was a religion, man of religion or a religious man and not a science man. And to that extent, irrelevant in the modern age with retrograde, views. That is what, Tolstoy was not very greatly respected by Russian, intelligence. He was a great man of literature and so on. Similarly, they said that, you see, the Gandhian thing, the whole philosophy was, religion and mass mobilization and social impact and all that, but not a science man, and to that extent irrelevant, you see. Now we are entering a new age. So, as they say, you see, there used to be this TV advertisement many years ago, Jamana badal gaya hai. So now, you see, we are entering a new age. And whenever I, talked, it was usually purely people didn't have time, from their professions. Intelligentsia and academics to go into the history, to know for the facts. And even when, people readily acknowledged Gandhi's ability in various directions, they were simply not aware. And so this happened to such an extent, really, that when you look at the science policy writings in India, creating the vision of a future India, you do not find, any rigorous mention of Gandhi. there is a sort of a missing Gandhi in our intellectual policies, economic policies. And at the same time, very interestingly, the Gandhians themselves also, went into, quite a different trajectory, so to say. Uh, they, took the surface values that Gandhi was talking about, and they stuck to, rituals sometimes. You see, I'm giving you my impression, okay? This need not be authentic and this need not be the final word, but I am giving you my impression from whatever study, whatever little I got to understand. Uh, so there is kind of a missing science in Gandhian studies also. As I will try to show you as we go along, I do not think this is very helpful, to the healthy intellectual or cultural growth of the nation. Uh, so it's a good question to ask, I think, that was Gandhi anti-science? Was he unscientific? In fact, this has been one of the, strong criticisms in modern times, for Gandhi. Was he against machinery and industrialization? Well, uh, let us look at his statement. The sewing machine, Gandhi declared, was one of the few useful things ever invented. So this was the statement he made. And of course, he is sitting here by another quote unquote machine or a gadget, uh, which was very near and dear to him. But I think if you read his detailed writings, basically he was saying that machines should not become our masters. Repeatedly in lots of his writings, he emphasized this, and he emphasized this so strongly, especially if you read his book, Hind Swaraj. And I would request, you see, all the intelligentsia, it's worth reading this book. At least you will enjoy criticizing Gandhi, because some of his statements there are so strong, you see, against the modern civilization. But when he was asked in the later part of his life that would you revise, you see, your book, because he wrote this book when he was very young, actually, when he was on a, one of his trips to, England, on a ship, he wrote this. So the entire handwritten manuscript is actually available, and many, criticisms have been written. So probably there he talked quite strongly about modern civilization, and then that this was sort of, interpreted that as if he was plainly, anti-science. But there's a very subtle and important difference here that I like to, draw your attention to. Gandhi was a severe critic of modern civilization. I will not go into the definitions, nor am I, qualified to go into that. But he was not of, against the science or scientific method. I will try to, as we go ahead, I'll try to elaborate on the statement. By actual episodes, you see, I'll give you examples mainly. I'll not give you much theory. You see, that can be done later, maybe. Gandhi did not condemn the scientific temper of the West, but he objected to the use of scientific discoveries against humanity. So this was a very, important point. Before we proceed, I think we should, devote, just half a minute. What is science? So in its essence, it's a search for, laws, fundamental laws of nature, universe, the laws that govern the living as well as the, material world, the cosmos. Now, in this sense, Gandhi was, in search of, basic rules, basic laws, always. And we try to point out here that Gandhi was kind of for ethical science. What I told you here, modern civilization, scientific method, and the use of discoveries against humanity. So ethical science. INSA, I think, brought out recently one very interesting, title regarding, ethics on science. So he was kind of always saying, Gandhi, that science devoid of ethics was not acceptable to him. Now, slowly coming to the, his statements, he said, of course, that my life consists of nothing else but numerous experiments. If I can narrate them in a dispassionate and humble spirit, far be it from me to claim any degree of perfectness. These are, by the way, Gandhi's quotations. You will find them. All these quotations have been taken mainly from the collected works of Mahatma Gandhi, even though I have not given references. Then he says, I claim for them nothing more than does a scientist. So he does mention scientists, by the way. And these are his words. Nothing more than does a scientist who, though he conducts his experiments with utmost accuracy, forethought and minuteness, never claims any finality on conclusions, but keeps an open mind. So apparently he must be knowing how scientists work. I think from this statement, somewhere he must have read or thought or whatever. Then he says, I have gone through deep self-introspection, searched myself through and examined and analyzed every situation. So analysis, thinking, all this, kind of things were part of his usual, routine. Everywhere, if you read, little bit of his dialogues with people, you see a very sharp intellect. He will catch you, if you are not alert, immediately you will be caught. This you find again and again if you look at his, so you see a kind of microscopic insight, introspection, and going into finest and minutest detail was his key strength. This is what I just said. If you study his thoughts, actions, and writings, you find that he analyzed and investigated his own life in the same microscopic manner, going to the minutest details. Very interesting point. He was a logical mind. And now I am very happy that I am beginning with his quotation on geometry. I can see Professor Raghunathan. So, geometry was a new subject in which I was not particularly strong. Gandhi describes his experience. And the English medium made it still more difficult for me. He had a lot to say, by the way, on the medium of instruction, but more on that later. Geometry was a new subject in which I was not particularly strong. English made it more difficult to me. When, however, with much effort, I reached the 13th proposition of Euclid, the utter simplicity of the subject was suddenly revealed to me. These are his words, because I have put them in quotations. The utter simplicity of the subject was suddenly revealed to me, a subject which only requires a pure and simple use of one's reasoning power could not be difficult. Ever since, geometry has been both easy and interesting for me. I talked about mother tongue. So then he says, you see, English became the medium of instruction in most subjects from the fourth standard. I'm beginning, from kind of a beginning, just to give you a little bit of chronological evolution of his thoughts. I found myself completely at sea. Now, I have talked with, many of my friends, even at TIFR. Many, when I actually came to TIFR and when I said, my name is Pankaj, because this is the way in which you introduce, yourself, standing in the elevator, going from, the ground floor to wherever you are going. As soon as they would hear my name, oh, so you must be from Calcutta or something. So I say from actually Gujarat. So then, of course, they will ask, what are you doing here? Anyway, TIFR memories aside, with my Bengali friends also, I found many of them actually studied, in their mother tongue, and they were, very prolific with their science. But, English, they said, fine, we are learning, and, it was a well accepted norm at TIFR, the test their, physics and not their language. Okay, so if our education were more systematic and if children were free from the burden of having to learn subjects through a foreign medium, there are many things he has told. Then he says a scientific knowledge of one language makes the knowledge of other languages comparatively easy. Throughout his life, he kept telling this. An example, tomorrow, Dr. J.C. Bose, this is famous Jagdish Chandra Bose. Tomorrow, Dr. J.C. Bose will be making a speech. Apparently, J.C. Bose invited Gandhi to the inauguration of his institute. And I think this is in that connection. If he speaks in Bengali, I will have no quarrel with him. I will have quarrel with him. So, such things are there. All right, but let us go to more details. He was actually in contact with best of the scientific authorities of his day, and this is a fact that I am afraid not widely well known, because his life is so vast, and because this issue has not been highlighted to that extent. This particular point, that he was in contact with best of the scientific authorities of his day, Sir Jagdish Chandra Bose came and met him in Mumbai in 1924. Previously, Gandhi went to Calcutta in 1917 to attend the opening of Bose's Research Institute. These are, whatever is in quotation, these are Gandhi's words. Opening of Bose's Research Institute. And then Gandhi said, it was spiritual affair rather than a public show. So Gandhi is saying this, means should be authentic. Gandhi would not, if he saw any public affair, he would, speak like that. Thanks to the marvelous researches of Bose, and then he says his discoveries are revolutionizing the accepted. Now, this is an interesting statement. Again, Sir C.V. Raman and Lady Raman came and discussed with him in 1936. Important scientists such as J.C. Bose, C.V. Raman, and Prafulla Chandra Ray were put as members of the Khadi Development Board. The very interesting episode of, Prafulla Chandra Ray and Gandhi. Gandhi, created a university established in 1920. It is known as Gujarat Vidyapith in Ahmedabad. I think it's a deemed university today of central funding. Now, very interestingly, he invited Dr. Prafulla Chandra Ray to inaugurate his university. Now, in 1920s, he was a big name. Gandhi was quite well known by that time, and any, lord or, sir or, big shot, a politician or famous statesman would have obliged him. Today I see, well-made science colleges being inaugurated by Bapus, you see. They are very good, you see, at, reciting Ramayana. But can't you get a scientist, you see, to inaugurate a science college which you have furnished at, at the expense of crores? But you see, it is interesting that he thought of a scientist. Dr. Prafulla Chandra Ray came over and did the inaugural. This particular picture, you see, I got found research from the Gujarat Vidyapith archives. Here is, you see, Dr. Ray reading his inaugural speech, and the affair is conducted in a very interesting manner. Was Gandhi aware of the amazing universe? You see, this is another question that a scientist would ask. I mean, generally, we scientists or intellectuals, you see, accuse, okay, I should not use the word accuse, but, our deep mind, there is an impression that, people are not aware generally of, the entirety of the universe, the subtleties, you see, of science. So, I just take an example here. Was Gandhi aware of the amazing universe, profound puzzles that it brings, and the future, directions, and the new perspective emerging in science? Here, I understand, there may be people who may not be actually scientists. So, when we talk of universe, today we talk of visible universe made of stars and galaxies. Each of the galaxies, such as this one, for example, Andromeda, would contain some 400 to 500 billions of stars. And the universe has again billions of such galaxies. And this entire universe is again expanding, of course. And the latest theory is that the universe is accelerating. All right, so this is one galaxy. Here is, you see, another similar galaxy. Now, I was simply wonderstruck, you see, when I, took the trouble of looking at the collected works. I mean, there are 100 volumes, and nowadays they are available actually for free for anyone interested to read. So when I did little bit of search, of course, you need to do, a little bit of, because they are voluminous. You see, it's more than 90 volumes, and you have to really look for it. But I just quote for you as a sample some statements that Gandhi has actually made. You see, in his writings, in his letters to his ashramites and so on. This universe, which is millions of times vaster than the earth. So apparently, he seems to know that universe is much bigger than Earth. All right, I'm in a very primary kind of, measure that scientists would, because you have talked, whenever I give talks on astronomy, and then, people confuse it with astrology today. And they ask me, of course, my surname is Joshi. So, you see, I am supposed to know, at least according to them. But anyway, Gandhi says, and what are we in this mighty universe? We are less than, he says we are less than, a small speck of dust. And what about the magnificent canopy of heaven? If heavenly bodies do not work like machines, the universe would come to a standstill. So apparently, he doesn't, mind using the word machine as opposed to, some popular understanding. Like atom in this universe, our existence as embodied beings is purely momentary. And all pervading conscious power fills our universe which we call God. So kind of, another definition. It is up to him to, say what he wants to say. Then he says, if we carefully observe and examine the universe, we shall see that. Now, I'll leave it to you. But what I emphasize here is that he is talking about carefully observing, and he is talking of carefully examining the universe. As in the body, so in the universe, the body ever dies yet lives. Similarly, the cosmos, as expressed in the creation, ever dies yet remains alive. Now, I'm not sure, I'm very interested where he, figured out. I know, for example, that, stars die and stars are born in faraway galaxies and all that. But why Gandhi is making this particular statement? It's very interesting how he got this kind of, knowledge. Okay, the talent which can see the universe in an atom. So he's talking of, scientific inquiry. He's talking of orderliness. And then he says an unalterable law. And, a man of world can as little comprehend the universe as a fish living in the ocean. Now, there's a very famous, statement by Arthur Eddington, actually, Sir Arthur Eddington. He was talking of a, bug in a potato, in the sack of, potatoes, the sack lying at the bottom of the ship. The ship is sailing in the sea. So Eddington said that this particular bug in the potato is trying to, measure the entire ocean and the universe beyond that. This is some interesting statement is there. But Gandhi is making this particular, statement about fish. And then similar statements. These are the, galaxies. The bottom line is, as I say at the end of this slide, he did not say, why bother about the universe? That is what I want to emphasize to you. Because such a statement I have, heard from many people in, other fields. That, don't we have enough problems here on Earth? Why bother about stars and galaxies and so on? On the other hand, Gandhi appears to be, excited. Despite, he was the person who was most, closely connected with the problems on Earth, apparently. But still, he didn't say that why bother universe. So that is, you see, an interesting statement. The key point that I make is he appears to be aware of the vastness and the infinite nature of the universe. Now, here I must point out to you how he, came, how he got interested in this kind of, curiosity on the cosmos. It was, you see, one Kaka Saheb Kalelkar, one of his associates, and he was, you see, greatly into the, astronomy and Akash Darshan and knowing the stars. And I think he must be the source of, Gandhi's interest. Now, all these statements are okay. But, I showed you Gandhi looking into microscope. Would he be interested in telescope? Well, he actually was. There is a report when he was in Yeravada jails, the press reporters went there and they saw in the ground two, big telescopes, sitting there. Apparently, they were imported from Bombay, from some wealthy followers or something. And Gandhi writes, I have not quoted, because too many quotations will become, my talk will become longer. Gandhi says, I use every free minute looking into these telescopes. He says that, oh, the telescope adjustments are, delicate, but they are not a problem. Now you see, my friends like, Vahia or Ratnashri, who is at, Nehru Museum in Delhi, they tell me that, people get, very fed up and scared with this telescope adjustments. But here is Gandhi saying that, they are delicate. He doesn't say they are difficult, they are delicate, he says, but, they are doable. And then he looks into the telescope and then he makes the star charts, and in detailed letters to his ashramites, he sends them the constellation maps. Okay, I have not written all that down in the slides, but you can see an article written by our Ratnashri, who was a student at TIFR earlier. She has written a nice article. And of course these are available in collected works again. So he sends them. So fellows like me feel that if Gandhiji is looking into telescopes and he is making all fine adjustments and so on, then what will we do? I mean, our job, he is doing everything anyway. He is talking of geometry, he is talking of telescope. Geometry is simple for him. And now he says, you see, telescope adjustments are delicate, but quite interesting and doable. But anyway, then he got very busy, you see, as soon as he came out of jail. So we were all safe. So no problem. The point is that if he heard of space telescope, you see, who knows? I mean, he would be interested in, the point I am trying to make is, on one hand, he had microscopic detail to, look into. On the other hand, he had a telescopic vision. He always wanted to see things far away. He was visualizing, and that is being, shown in his comments on modern civilization. It is really worth reading. You may not agree with everything, okay? You may even fight with him. But if you read his comments on modern civilization, I give you the reference in Hindu Swaraj. You may throw away the book, you may get angry, whatever. But, then you will feel like, going again and picking up the book, and, he will not leave you alone. So look at that book. You see, so, right. Very interesting point is, he was at the same time totally against blind faith. You see, we are talking about things, almost 100 years ago. So read his statement on astrology. I know nothing of the science of astrology, and I consider it to be a science if it is a science. Okay. And I consider it to be a science if it is a science of doubtful value. And then he says, to be severely left alone by those who have any faith in providence. So, I mean, as I was telling you right in the beginning, my job or my agenda is just to put to your attention these things, because these are not well-known, statements from Gandhi. When we talk of Gandhi, we always talk of partition. We always talk of, some communal divides. We always talk of untouchability. I mean, we have no time, you see, and we have no, all right, let me not criticize ourselves. We are all, we have to praise, I think, our achievements. So that is good. But I think I will say that, I'll just say that, it's very interesting. When I read this first time, because, when you talk of Gandhi, this Prarthana and Raghupati Raghav Rajaram and Sarva Dharma Prarthana. So, I mean, you won't be surprised, you see, if he goes inside his hut and, looking up some chart to, decide what will happen, in his next moment with the Britishers. No, he never did that. He never had, and this is a statement, and I think he lived according to this particular, statement. Here he is using the telephone. He got this phone installed in his, ashram in Sevagram at Nagpur, because he had very important phone calls coming in, and people insisted that, Bapu, it is impossible to communicate with you. You insist on staying in, totally outside the cities, far away, and, in a totally barren land, and how to communicate, how do we get in touch with you? So then a special phone line was installed, and here he is, on a ship. Is looking into, a Durbin, a calibration instrument, and the captain very happily is, guiding Gandhi. And this is a closer. Scientific knowledge requires constant probing into the why and wherefore of every little process that you perform. It's very interesting, He says, what you perform. I mean, generally what we do is we look out there. What is happening in a star? What is happening, to the microbe? What is happening to the bacteria? And nowadays we are so concerned with the virus. Here Gandhi is talking about the observer himself, which is, a very important part of quantum theory, the observer and the observed. Another very interesting episode, postgraduate research. He established Gandhi Seva Sangh, and that was meant for postgraduate study and thinking and research. This is clearly written, by the way, in the formation and its basic constitution. Gandhi suggested that other institutions, mainly busy with action, would have a little time, to, do all this. So he said that this particular entity, organization, must study, understand, and investigate the key principles which are basics to Khadi, Charkha, and other things. So of this particular board, I referred earlier Raman and, all those people. So they were member of this particular board. Now, talking of, this his Khadi thing, this is how he began. So, our R.K. Lakshman, this is called Takli, a spindle, a needle, a kind of a spinning, thing. At the top is the cotton, and at the bottom is the spinning thing. This is how Gandhi began, by the way. Then if you read his autobiography, he commissioned an army of, today we will, call them field workers, or I don't know, we have in science various names. But in his time, I think they were, I don't know what they were called, but, they were asked to go around in India and go to villages. And then in his autobiography, there is a chapter, which is with the title Found. Oh, I got it. Eureka. That statement, so that was this box, charkha that he discovered. So he graduated from this spindle to this box charkha, which was, by the way, a result of research and investigation. By the way, this he carried it, with him in the roundtable conference in the UK, England, and one of this that he took there was auctioned only recently, I think a year and a half ago, and it was sold for rupees 1 crore and 10 lakhs in UK. Exactly same kind of a machine. But then, most interesting episode, he announces a competition on 24th July 1929 of 1 lakh rupees or 7,700 pounds prize. This prize is for further improvement of the design and mechanism of charkha. But read the date. The date is, you see, 20s, when the prize was announced. If you look at today's, you see, cost, it is about 10 crores of rupees. Look at that. Now, I mean, is someone announcing, a big prize like, Abhi, Kaun Banega Crorepati mein, we stop at 1 crore, I believe. But for some social cause, is there some prize of this magnitude being announced even today? So this is a fact. I mean, I am not, making out anything. All these things you verify for yourself. So isn't it interesting to know that the fellow had a courage, in 1920s to announce this kind of a prize? I mean, he didn't have a bank account. He, didn't carry money with him. I mean, apparently all sorts of, good supporters must be there. I mean, you see, when I was talking to Gandhi with some politician, you see, a few years ago, he said Gandhi had a lot of facilities. You see, I mean, all these wealthy people, supported him. But anyway, this was, you see, then Ambar Charkha. One Mr. Ambarnathan was there. Now, I mean, look at, our sense of history. This fellow Ambarnathan, gave Gandhi this particular design. Though it was after many years, by the way. And then this is, you see, this was the design which, towards the very end of Gandhi's life, this picture, Gandhi is examining. But then, he had no time, the partition, the communal divide, he went to Noakhali, and then he died. The prize was not given. The charkha was adopted. The design was adopted. The prize was not given. I mean, it is not like, the prizes, which are announced in some Western countries. I think you can be sure money will come to you. I mean, it is not like you get the Nobel Prize and, you don't get the money. I mean, this is unheard of, right? But in India, it actually happened. Now, only few years ago, I mean, couple of decades, a decade ago or so, I think to the, his son or daughter or something like that, the prize was given, but it was only 1 lakh rupees given. You see, not with interest, not 10 crores. Anyway, this is for your amusement, but you see, look at this picture and look at Gandhi's face and his attention, how he is examining, you see. And then he wrote prolific way. He wanted some economics, you see, he wanted the villagers who kept idle for 4 to 6 months a year to ply charkha. He says, you are doing nothing, do at least this. Now, critics, of course, he had a lot of criticism in those days. It's not that, everyone was worshipping Gandhi. I met some UP gentleman who used to visit me, and he said that all this, you see, fasting is also totally bogus. During the night, he is taking all fruit juices and all milk and all that. This is true, you see, I am not joking. He really told me, and then he even sent me a manuscript, which was written, to show that Gandhi is total hoax. He is actually not fasting. Anyway, so critics laughed at Gandhi's attempt that in this machine age, you see, what are you talking about? But Gandhi argued that needle has not yet given place to swing a machine, nor has the hand lost its cunning in spite of the typewriter. Similarly, spinning mills are okay. Spinning wheels may coexist with spinning mills. The point is the spinning wheel can reach, interior villages, whereas a mill cannot reach a fraction of the population. He wanted poor to become self-sufficient. And he said that every yard of khadi that you wear, my friend Krishnan is wearing khadi kurta. He just informed me, which he probably, but I always see him in khadi kurta. But I think he must have, bought a special one today. So will mean some coppers going into the pockets of the poor. Of course, hand spun signifies the simplicity of life. Khadi has soul about it. Now, an important statement. After 1925, more than 100,000 spinners were employed, training in all the processes of khadi making. Now, Gandhi claimed, I see nothing in the world which can compete with this mill in miniature. Show me another industry or corporation. He uses the word corporation, by the way, not industry, corporation, that has in 18 years put 4 crores of rupees in the pocket of lakhs of neediest men and women, with another important statement, with the same capital expenditure. And for the young man, he, listening to the talk, he presented Kasturba saris from yarn, a spun. Kasturba was, Gandhi's wife. She was also a regular spinner. Now critics say that, oh, you see, what is the use of spinning? It adds only an anna. You see, we had these annas and pies in those days, or 2 a day to spinners' income. So Gandhi said the average income is hardly 3 paise per head per day in India at that time, of course. If I can now, and today, of course, our graph may be much better. If I can supplement that income by even 3 paise with the help of charkha, am I not right in calling the charkha my cow of plenty? But then there were, other philosophies also that Gandhi have had. You see, you may or may not agree with all this, talk of Gandhi, or, the so-called, economics. But, there are people, who talk about, small is beautiful and so on and so forth. So I just thought it worth, bringing it to attention. But again, coming back, I said all these things, you see, to emphasize the research part and the prizes he was declaring for, advanced designs of machines and so on. But the point is, he emphasized the need for research and investigation again and again. And this is the least emphasized part that I hear in the discourses about Gandhi today. You see, there will be many talks on Gandhi, but nobody seems to be emphasizing, this particular, be it Khadi, be it Ayurveda, or any other discipline. He criticized very strongly the lack of research in Ayurveda. We hear a lot about Ayurveda today, right? But it was Gandhi who was very critical. What are you doing? You see, his dialogue with Vaidyas. Now, this is another, interesting chapter. With the Ayurvedic practitioners, continued for a while. And he strongly emphasized that we must not just have a blind faith in all that is quote unquote old and all that is quote unquote traditional. So a lot of fight he had, with the Ayurvedic practitioners. Here is, you see, kind of tending to one, Parchure Shastri. It's a very interesting story. I have very limited time. This Parchure Shastri came from a long walk and he sat under a tree far away from, the Gandhi's ashram. And then Gandhi inquired. He was sitting there hungry, you see, for 24 hours. And then Gandhi sent his men, asking why you are sitting there, why you are not coming if you have come to see me. He said, I have leprosy. How can I come, you see, closer? But I just wish to have your darshan. And then Gandhi said, he brought him to his ashram, he tended to him. And, this was another, fond, profession of Gandhi. He was very keen in tending the ill. Look at, his images. You see how careful. You can even gauge his all attention. Whether his wounds are healing, kya ho raha hai, whether the fellow is improving. Anyway, I think let me go a little faster. I have, I think, about 10 minutes or so. You see his international connections with scientists and philosophers, very notable. Madame Curie's daughter Eve Curie meets Gandhi, 1942. She presents Madame Curie's, biography to Gandhi. And Gandhi has the following to say. वह तो सच्ची तपस्विनी थी, she was the real, pinnace. मुझे होता है पेरिस जाके उसका घर देखा हूं. I should visit her, as a pilgrimage. I want to visit her home in Paris. हमारे किसी विज्ञानी ने ऐसा दुख नहीं भोगा. Have any of our scientists usually gone through this much of torture? हमने तो अंग्रेजों की मेहरबानी से, अंग्रेजों के ढंग से काम करना ही सीखा. That is, we have, imbibed the styles of the English and, the styles of the, I think now I will not read further. Shodh Vibhag Adi ke Safed Hathi khade ke, because then you see the NSF will not call me for another colloquium. So I will not read out, you see, this statement. He even says, you see, badi badi prayogshala hai. This is from the book by Dr. Sushila Nair. She was with Gandhi. The important point is, then Sushila Nair, Dr. Sushila Nair says, Madam Curie की किताब से तो बस बापू चिपक गए हैं. He straight away read the whole book. By the way, Gandhi was a big, voracious reader. Now, this also people just don't know. They just think he must be walking all around, you see, all the time. But in jails, he just finished the libraries, you see, altogether. इस किताब की लेखिका, उनकी लड़की ईव क्यूरी, बापू से मिलने दिल्ली में आई थी. बोले, उस लड़की से मुझे अच्छी जान पहचान करनी थी. He said कि ये तो, I read this book, now I should have, talked a lot more with this, daughter of Madam Curie. शाम को मुझे बोले, then again he called Nair in the evening, तुझे इस किताब का हिंदी में सुंदर अनुवाद करना होगा. You must translate this book, in the Hindi very well. So, this E equal to MC square guy, they corresponded. They never met, but they had a very interesting exchange of letters. You know very well, you see, Einstein's statement, which apparently has come literally true. Einstein said that generations to come will scarce believe that such a one existed ever. So it is actually happening that way. This must be some dream, thing. And this guy must not have existed. They, took it very literally. So Einstein writes to Gandhi in 1931 when he was in UK. That is, Gandhi was in UK. Your work shows to the world that goal can be achieved without violence. Einstein writes to Gandhi. I hope to meet you in future. Gandhi replies to him in Berlin. It's a matter of great satisfaction that you found my work useful. He was very happy, you see. He must be knowing who Einstein is. So he says, you see, it's a matter of great satisfaction. Look forward to meet you, that too in India, in my ashram. So, you see, he was a very smart fellow. I mean, he wanted to get even Einstein to his ashram. So, just like he got Raman and Ray and Bose and of course many other greats came. So here is, you see, with his favorite, music instrument, and there was a cartoon by somebody. I exactly do not know. I just found an interesting, way of similarity. This was, you see, how he was sort of. And then again, these two guys were, great friends. I mean, they fought actually quite a lot with each other. But they were very great friends. You see, when Gandhi was, on his deathbed, Tagore came, Tagore's health was not so good at that time, but he came, all the way from Calcutta to, meet Gandhi and to, explain to him or to persuade him or at least to be by his side. And Gandhi, when he first landed in 1915, you see, from South Africa, he sent most of his ashramites into Tagore's, Shantiniketan. He said, this is the right place for you guys to stay. He didn't, put them somewhere in, anywhere in the country. He knew that Tagore's is the place where his ashramites can stay. And some of them can then became, great painters and, so on and so forth. So one of their major debates was this Bihar earthquake. Major earthquake was there. And Gandhi, related it to sin of untouchability. And they said that, look, the karmas that we do, come back to us in one way or the other. But Tagore was furious. He said, how can you, he wrote a very strong protest saying this is highly unscientific and so on. But you see, Gandhi sticks to his gun. He owns full responsibility. He didn't say, you see, misreporting in the press and I never said that and, nothing like that. He sticks to his gun. Yes, I believe so. And that was what I said. But to top it, then he said that does your science know all answers? This writes back to Tagore. Is it really perfect in all its aspects? And then he made also prophetic statement. The science of love and that of life is much greater than that of matter. So our biologist friends must be very happy. Science of life, Gandhi says, is much greater than all the particle physics, you see, that our CERN guys are doing. I'm just, distorting a little bit. You understand what is said here. And much greater discoveries will come in the former in future. A kind of a mystic, Gandhi. In a famous talk, he said there is a mysterious force that pervades the universe. It can work wonders if we allow it to work through ourselves. Now, that is another very interesting statement. We are, very strong often in our various beliefs. Okay, the point is, the bottom line, universe is one, narrow views do not help. Life has to be viewed in entirety. And that is sort of, what is coming out. What I am trying to say from all this discussion so far is perhaps he had a fairly, bigger perspective. He did not want to see the cosmos in a fragmented way. This is especially why I quoted his so many statements on the universe as a whole. His, sky watching and, our place in the vast universe, and most importantly, our great ignorance on the universe and its basic laws. Out there is, the domain of ignorance. And of course, the cosmology, the ancient man used to wonder where the hell did it all come from. Today we sit in big laboratories, big machines, and we ask where the hell did it come from. Similar question. And we, of course, have now, lots of very, simple tools. This is all cosmology simplified for you. But the point is, there is the smallest world of atoms, and then there is vast universe. All right, now really coming to the end. In fact, we must note Gandhi, looked at the universe in a wholeness throughout his life. But what I have completely left out is, when he came back from South Africa, he had a list of 100 questions on universe. He had list of 100 questions of universe, which he gave to someone called Srimad Rajchandra. Some of you might have heard the name of this person. And then there is very interesting, Vinoba Bhave is another, a very great personality, Sarvodaya movement. They had a very interesting dialogue. If you read it, it reads very fancy and, philosophic. And then, he had close contact with scientists and philosophers. Ma Anandmai, his followers, some of his followers fought with Gandhi. On his beliefs on Khadi and, his going on fast and so on. So Gandhi simply sent them to Raman Maharshi. Raman Maharshi is another big name, in South. And then Swami Yogananda, a person in West, a guy who is a Swami who went to, US. He came over to Gandhi's ashram, had a lot of dialogue. So what I am trying to say is, he was not a single track person and was very open. I hope the discussion so far, gives some kind of a glimpse, which, may inspire us to, study more on Gandhi. He was always very interested in, things scientific, when they were explained to him. As I said, he was very interested in, new development and research. So finally, what will be his, mind working, what will be his priorities today. We must seek the help of thinkers, philosophers, Gandhian scholars. This is what is needed. Politicians have kind of, taken away Gandhi from us, have they? I don't want to be impolite to anyone, but, these are the people, whom we need, and scientists are definitely, among them. And we need more insights. That is what I am trying to drive at. So, if few persons ask few questions and go deeper, then, my, purpose, will be served. He, of course, would support strongly solar energy. I think he will do wonders with, mobile and, all this communication technologies. People have written thesis, his communication, in those days, 1915, within a year, his name was known throughout India. You see, very little technology available, very little anything available that we have today, no internet, nothing. And how, 1 year, entire India knows him. So what would he have done with, all these things? Renewable energy, sustainable development. As regards COVID, he would have certainly come up with, very surprising and novel comments. And one of them would be environmental degradation. How the viruses, prosper when, the air and the atmosphere is polluted. So these are all, things of research. Very important thing. We have done very little in 7 decades on education. Fortunately, of course, we shouldn't speak negative. We have the, new education policy. But, we have to be very alert, because earlier also education policy came and there are lots and lots of literature telling how it went to dustbin, no implementation was done. So, you see, we are, very enthusiastic when things happen. When they come, you see, but then the, the glossy, thing just evaporates. So he would have communicated and interacted much better with educationists. As I said, he established university. He had his entire education system, but then he didn't have time, to pursue it because of the economic and, all the, don't take it, you see, that I am advocating anything. Okay, I'm just putting the facts to your attention, and then that doesn't mean that, I am advocating anything. So again and again, the list would be long. We need to look into all this, and this is my last slide. You see, a deeper dialogue and thinking on Gandhi's ways of looking at the cosmos should be, I think, meditated upon. So my question is, after, all our discussion and of course your own thoughts, I am sure many of you are scholars in many of these things. So does this deserve attention? Is this the right and ripe time to do it, in an international and global way? And when I say, international and global way, I say that, you see, communism capitalism, socialism. You see, limitations of these things have come to fore. We know communism, is not working. Capitalism, we were, very upbeat about that. But you see, the fault lines are coming to attention. Socialism, you see, some people, worked very hard for that. Now, people like, Amartya Sen and, some others are talking about, what is called Gandhian humanism. Humanism is another big word. Okay, it's all not my territory. In Sanskrit, there is this word, you see, anadhikrut chesta. And that is, you see, where you go to the territory, which doesn't belong to you. So I do not intend to do that. My only purpose is, you see, on this great day of Gandhi Jayanti, we just usually take a peep at the happenings, the things that have taken place actually, you see, in the past. I've relied on facts. And finally, an apology. If anything that I said, which crossed my own territory, I'm, you see, a cosmologist and a black hole fellow at the end of the day. In TIFR, you see, I was so focused, you see, on these things that whenever I came around, one, gentleman, senior professor, whenever he saw me, he would ask me, how are space-time singularities, Pankaj? So this was his first question, for a long time. So I think from that, I have, taken this liberty. Thank you very much for your patience and forbearance. Thank you so much again.
Thank you very much, Professor Pankaj Joshi, for your very, very interesting talk. Gave a lots of insights, obviously, which we are not aware of these dimensions and and aspects of Gandhi. And of course, your research into all these, to justify the statements, and also your, various codes and connections that you brought in the given time. Of course, time is always kind of constraint, but quite interesting. And I do see we do see some questions both on YouTube and Zoom. So let us start taking a few of them. The first question is by Sandhya. Sandhya, would you like to ask this question?
No, okay, I can just read it out.
Yeah.
So I was curious about in your readings, can you elaborate on what were Gandhi's thoughts on how ethics should influence science? Was he thinking about the problems that were studied? Was he thinking about how science is practiced, or in the applications of science? And in your readings, did he actually separate curiosity-driven science from applications of science? For instance, the bomb is an application of science, and the role of the politics in the latter.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Very, very interesting question. I don't remember the, quotation exactly, but I think he narrated some 7 big sins. And I think one of them was science without ethics, if I remember correctly. But independently of this quotations, as I mentioned, last in my talk, humanism, that is, human being was a kind of central for him, and he was all for curiosity, driven science. However, sometimes he turned this, so-called curiosity as something on surface. He indicated to, an in-depth level of, thinking and consciousness, where he suggested that curiosity actually emerges from the very depth of your, inner being or your heart or your mind. It is only an outer manifestation. Your inner quest really is to, know the truth of the things. And then what you do, I think, since you gave me the liberty to, give me my impression from my readings. So my impression is that he was indicating that, things like bombs and this and that, what happens is, you see, curiosity driven, or even the things which have been, done from, the real quest of knowledge, when they fall into the, hands of people who are not really at that level, then they are sort of, always used to the best of the benefit of the humanity. So then he did oppose that kind of use. In fact, there is a very famous letter he wrote to Hitler. You see, in his time, this thing was, world wars, you see, were very much on. And of course, people, joked at Gandhi that go and, convince Hitler, of your non-violence. And then he had, very interesting replies to that. That is the point. The fellow was very smart, I mean. You see, if you ask such a question to me, I will be totally bombed. You see, iska to, kya jawab, what, I have no answer. But, the replies he has given. So to summarize my reply to your question, yes, he was all for curiosity-driven science, but he also traced the origin of the curiosity. And then, he went deeper and, he made, this kind of, he used this word tapasvi, you see, for, Madame Curie. So, he had that kind of a perspective that, you have to be, that kind of a devotion. Now, that is the word, that he will use. So, he had that perspective as well. Thank you.
Okay. Let me take one question from the YouTube. This is Abhinav Chaudhary. How the Gandhian philosophy was the inspiration behind setting up the first pharmaceutical company in India, the Bengal Chemicals and Pharmaceuticals by the scientist Acharya P.C. Ray?
Very, very, very interesting. Again, I mean, you see, Gandhi was a very fond, a supporter, not just supporter, but originator, I would say, of, what shall I say? I mean, Atmanirbhar, Sanskrit word anyway, which is very popular today. So he was very supportive, or he originated Swadeshi, was a very, very popular word at that time. So in fact, he wanted the industries, because you see what happened in those days. There's all these mills and everything. It all came from, abroad, and everything, was imported, exported. So it was a part of, big capitalism economy. So he wanted the Swadeshi science to prosper. I mean, that is what, Homi Baba and, I mean, pardon my, taking little bit of liberties, okay. Just see the meaning behind that. I am sometimes using, little starker, analogies. But, I mean, if I am crossing, beyond certain limit, just forgive me. But, we are talking, I mean, make it in Israel and, wo cryogenics ka hai to yahan banao, ye hai, wo hai. So similarly, in those days, he inspired, you see, in fact, Dr. Ray and many others, that, we should have our own. He was not against chemicals. He was not against, dyes, and he was not against beauty. I mean, music, you see, I didn't say even a word, you see, on music. He invited best of the musicians of his times, Aluskar and all that, to his ashram. And he said, see, you may not be or may be interested in music, okay? Don't take it that way. What I am saying is what Gandhi did to, as far as a traditional, Shastriya art was concerned, he said that all these bhajans people sing, in whatever ways they like to, which is also okay. But he got all this bhajan. If you see this ashram bhajanavali, just go to this Bombay Sarodaya Mandal, which is just a kilometer from all of you, and Tardev. So get a copy of this ashram bhajanavali. He got all this bhajan set to, the classical ragas. And he himself, criticized. No, this, I don't like this swara, I don't like this. No, these things are simply unknown even to musicians. So this is what, is the whole purpose of, our deliberations. So he did that also. So similarly, he inspired, Swadeshi industry also. Unfortunately, it all just died. I mean, big imports and, big, collaborations, and then we just, after all, we have been, not we have been, I mean, we were slaves. And for only 70 years we are free. Let me put it that way. We had been slaves, for quite long time. So the original purpose was forgotten, like many things I was just alluding to earlier. And then, people forgot about that. You see, PC Ray chale gaye. तब उनका कोई म्यूजियम बना दो, मेमोरियल बना दो, and then we go our own way. जमाना बदल गया है. This TV ad was there. वो जमाना बदल गया है तो जी माँ जी जमाना बदल गया. So you see, all this, we are losing the wisdom, you see. So it's something very interesting in the development of, industry. By the way, Ahmedabad big mill owners were the greatest friends of Gandhi. Birla was a great friend of Gandhi. Okay, let me stop. We can go to the next.
Yeah, we have a couple of more questions, Professor Joshi. One is from Professor Vivek Datar. What were his views on education, including teaching of science?
I am sorry,
what were his views? What were his views on education, including teaching of science?
Fantastic. I already gave the example of geometry, and he praised the science of geometry enormously. He had lots of, fundamental views on education. I'll just quote you another example of South Africa. He had a class. He was a teacher. He used to take a class in, Phoenix Ashram over there. So he taught his students. Now, a very bright fellow, he placed in the second number. And a person who was dull, who was not, so intelligent, he gave him the first number in the class. And there was an uproar. So people said, how can you give, first number to this fellow who is, everybody knows, not so bright? And, the other fellow who is so bright, you gave him, second or third number. So then Gandhi said that this particular fellow, who is, I know, not so bright, he has put so much important effort that for this particular exam, he deserves the first number for the effort he has put in, whereas that fellow has not done as well as he should have done from his intellectual levels, which are already good. So then, because of, the effort and, the caliber and the progress this fellow has made from his, low gradings, that's why I have given him the higher number. So he has, very interesting views on education. He meant, he insisted on education with experience. This was some very important thing that he emphasized. So I think he would have very strongly objected the international schools and about the medium, of course. Also, he had no objection at all to learning any languages, of the world. By the way, before he was shot dead, he was doing his Bengali lesson. Can you believe this? He just completed his Bengali lesson. And then, Sardar Patel and Nehru came in for, all this thing was going on at that time. And then he went for prayer and he said, I am already delayed, because the Bengali lesson I had to complete. And now I am delayed for my prarthana. So he was not against learning any languages, but he said that when a child is born, teach her in the language which is spoken in the house. don't, give immediate, a new language shock. I think just revisit my slide. He has said, about some, mother tongue education to begin with. So he, I think, had, French and all sorts of things. He had this whole thing, Nai Talim. But then again, like this, our Swadeshi industry, this is also, almost forgotten. So that's why I said that, we need some revisit by, intelligent people. I mean, scientists, I mean, I have a lot of respect for them. And obviously, because, I mean, I don't have to give reasons for them, right? So you see, jara hatke, aap thoda, if you read, of course, if you read and, talk like this, as I am doing today, some of my fellow scientists would, could, tell me ki what business you have got to do, talking other than, black holes. And so I am very aware of, those things. But, scientists should, expand out, especially know these views on education. And by the way, my mathematician friends already know that Dr. Manjul Bhargava has contributed to our education policy. So similarly, we can study, some of this education thoughts of Gandhi, which are quite revolutionary, in fact. Thank you.
Yeah, we have possibly the last question. This is from Alak. Could you elaborate upon Gandhi's stand on scientific method and the controversy with his friend Rabindranath, who gave him the name Mahatma, about the Bihar earthquake? Did Vinoba Gandhi dialogue elaborate on Gandhi's views on the scientific method? The response of Gandhi, does your science know everything, is a little frustrating to those who believe in the scientific method. In fact, it reminds me of famous present-day politicians criticizing the science of climate change is incomplete. So this is a kind of...
Thank you. And hello, Alak, and hello, Sandhya and Vivek. And again, wonderful meeting you over here. Yes, I mean, it's very interesting as well as difficult question. But yes, I would agree, that Gandhi and Tagore agreed on lots of things and disagreed on many things. But interestingly, what I would like to emphasize is that on many things on which they had disagreements earlier, over the years, also converged into, agreements. So, again, as was, I think, asked by Sandhya, or, I think their friendship, went beyond the surface or beyond the obvious. That is, Gandhi and Tagore, fought. They had, very strong letters, exchanged. But it was very different from the kind of fights, about which we read in the newspapers today. I mean, at the core, they were deepest of the friends. I mean, you can again, agree or disagree with me, Alak. I mean, we have had ourselves, many agreements and disagreements, right, over my many years, and our sharing office next to each other. But yes, they had, their respect and affection preserved all throughout. So personally, to me, their disagreement is actually a very welcome thing rather than frustrating, because then we, ordinary mortals, learn a lot from this kind of debates, when this kind of very important people debate. If I have missed out on any part of your question, please, Satya, repeat.
Yeah, I mean, it was towards the end, of course, it was also a comment that he was kind of trying to point to current day situation where we also often come across kind of slightly frustrating treatment or statements from the politician and other people in the big positions. So
Right.
it's kind of trying to draw some kind of a parallels with what might have kind of hit, if you're talking Rabindranath.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, thank you. Yes, similar thing was, I think, also there between Nehru and Gandhi. They sort of disagreed on, lots of things. But then, again, I think there were many agreements as well. I would put it that way. And, this intellectual debates happen, and it is, it is our responsibility. It is for we intellectuals, we scientists, or we, other philosophers in the society to, go to the deeper levels rather than, taking them at the surface. And then, when we do that, I think, many wonderful things come out. For example, in some of the Amartya Sen's writings, some very, very important facets, or Ramchandra Guha's, big monumental, studies. And similarly, abroad also many studies are happening on Gandhi and Tagore. So this is all very wonderful happening, I would say. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Professor Joshi, thank you very much. I think we have all the questions answered. And once again, on behalf of all the TFR community, as well as many of them who actually also participated from outside, we would like to thank you very much for taking your time. And on this day, talking about this, as I said, the proud son of India. And also a rather difficult topic, I must say, because putting his views in the current context and so on, as you said, his life is so vast and so large. It also very difficult often to kind of bring his views into the exact context. I think you have done a really great job. Thank you very much on behalf of all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I completely agree with you. His life was vast, and that's why I have stuck throughout to, factual incidences to the best of my capacity. Thank you so much again, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Good night.